Good morning. Welcome to Fountain Street Church on April 12th, 2020, Easter Sunday. I am Fred Wooden, Senior Minister, and together with my clergy colleague, Christopher Rowe, we are considering joy in a time of COVID-19. The last 4 weeks, we have reprised our Advent themes of faith, hope, love, and now joy to see how we can live them in the era of a pandemic and social distancing. Christopher will bring his insight in just a moment. After that, I will ask you to make an offering via our website or by text. I will then pause for a prayerful moment before sharing my thoughts on joy during an uncertain and fearful time. Music will complement this all along the way, including a special closing in which we will share photos that some of you have sent in this week to make a virtual Easter parade. First, though, let's hear from Christopher.
Well, good morning, Fountain Street Church. My name is Christopher Rowe, and I am the Spiritual Life and Learning Minister here at the church. It is a joy to be with all of you virtually this morning on this unusual and extraordinary Easter Sunday. Now, our theme for today is joy. And that feels ironic because this is not the kind of Easter that any one of us had ever imagined. And so when I thought about what I was going to say about joy, I really struggled with it. Talking about faith and hope and love in a time of COVID-19, that we can kind of conceptualize. But what does joy look like right now in these extraordinary times? And I have to be honest, I don't always love the word joy. And I really don't like it when people say to me or to others, or even just culturally, choose joy. I don't know if you've ever seen that. I had a coworker that was her email address, was just choosejoy@hotmail.com. That's not her email address anymore, and this was a long time ago. I've seen the wall art that they sell at places like Hobby Lobby, and it just says choose joy, and you plaster it on your wall. I've even seen people's messages of hope in their windows, even around Grand Rapids, and they just put up there, choose gratitude, choose joy, and it feels bossy, and sometimes it feels a little disingenuous to me, because it seems like you're telling me I need to choose to be happy. I need to be choosing to choose a different attitude other than sadness or feeling overwhelmed or melancholy. And so I haven't always loved the word joy or being told I needed to choose joy. And so as I wrestled with this week, I came across a quote I had forgotten about. It's super simple, and it's just from Mother Teresa. And she says, where there is love, there is joy. Where there is love, there is joy. And that I could get behind. I mean, we just talked about love last week, and I think all of us are seeing these radical extensions of love all around us and around the world right now. In the midst of uncertainty and fear and a little bit of chaos and unknown, we are seeing people step up and give love, and I am seeing that from Fountain Streeters every day. I could not possibly exaggerate how many wonderful emails and phone calls I have had with congregants who are telling me about their experiences of love in the everyday and ordinary. And so I really get behind this. Where there is love, there is joy. I think we can choose joy if we're choosing love. And so I guess I would just say on this Easter day, where we're all at home, where we aren't going to have family gatherings or getting together with friends, that we choose love so that we might experience joy in the way that Mother Teresa might say we would. Because I don't know about you, but it's hard for me to just make myself feel happy or choose joy and glee. But I can choose love because I know what it feels like to be loved by all of you, and I know what it feels like for me to put my energy into loving you. And so this Easter, I just invite all of you to choose love so you can experience joy. Maybe that's what my wall art should say. Experience joy. And I would be remiss if I didn't also take a pause and just thank our senior minister, Fred Wooden. Because I believe that through all of his career with us, and probably in every church he served, he has chosen love so he could experience joy. And so on this extraordinary unusual, unexpected Sunday where we are not doing the joyful recognition we thought we might be doing for him. I want to thank him for his service and for his posture of always choosing love so that we might experience joy. Thank you, Fred, and thank you to this congregation who has often, over and over again, chosen love so we can experience joy. Happy Easter. May you experience joy through love. I miss you all. Stay resilient.
Easter Sunday is generally a well-attended service and therefore one with fuller than usual collection plates. Obviously, we are not together as usual and thus may not feel like an occasion is present to give in the usual way. But the reason this Sunday is unusual is also the very reason we need you to give. As many have discovered, this church not only still exists in the pandemic, it is even more important than before. But because you are at home now and not in church, you are not as likely to give money during worship right now. But I think that has to change. Your giving, even now, at this moment, is part of that worship service, even though we are not together personally. So I want you to consider pausing now on a day that has special significance for billions in the world. And while the music will follow and give you pause to be happy with the beauty of the music, I want you to then make a generous contribution via our website. This will ensure that the church can continue doing what it is doing and doing so well during this challenging and even difficult time. And what's more, it will be ready to resume all our traditional activities when that time comes. Please go to the website listed below or text to give. It really does mean that much, and I know it means much to you. Thank you.
Will the circle be unbroken? By and by, Lord, by and by. There's a better home awaiting. If we try, Lord,
is a curious phenomenon that, well, how can I say it? If I do it alone, it's different than when I do it with people here. And yet it is a powerful pause we can bring to the day. And especially in challenging times, we find our hearts asking for a higher, wider, and deeper connection. This morning on Easter, as we contemplate the mysteries that attach to that story, the riddles of life and death, and the meanings of both, my heart goes out to those names of those who, in the time I have served here, reach the point of death, but who continue on not only in memory but in meaning. It has been my custom over the years to lift those names up during our time of worship, because it is at this moment that we exceed the limits of the moment, when past can flood in and the future can call us forth. That is when prayer makes itself most evident. So I devote this time to the names of those now gone but still present. Mary Swain, who served as a tutor with my wife. Tom Blandford, who, even after he was widowed, sought to comfort others. Edie McCarger, whose indomitable cheer was sometimes overwhelming, but always welcome. I did not know Don Cranenberg Sr., but his name still resonates in this place. Joan Newbury was devoted to the beauty this place had and could provide, and was active on our art committee. Bob Baumbach helped to bring the ministry of this church out into the world of radio and television long before an internet. I wish I knew Rita Melver Pifko. I knew a bit of Ruth Emmerich. Bert Smith is but a name to me, but is meaningful to others, as is Dorothy Kleiner. Gordon McCarty is part of a family I have seen every week for years. He may be absent to me, but he's present to them in very profound ways. Russ Gray Jr. and Laura Gray, Earl Klum. I feel a sadness that these were people I did not know. But all of these were faithful members of this community, and hundreds more whose names deserve to be lifted up annually at the time they left the life that we know. Their lives enriched the future that is us. And we do not pray for them so much as in gratitude for them. I have long used an old Jewish prayer as the basis for my gratitude. It begins, El Maleh Rachamim, God of mercy, dwelling in the heavens heights, bring proper rest beneath the wings of your Shekinah, your presence, to the souls of our beloved and departed. Proper rest indeed. See that they are united with you and with all those who have lived before. Grant perfect rest beneath the wings of your presence. May they rest in peace. May we be at peace. And may we say, Amen. Well, this was not what I expected. To be sitting here alone in a vast cathedral sanctuary on Easter Sunday. Or, for that matter, you being at home, rather than being in this immense and beautiful sanctuary on Easter Sunday. A year ago, I was thinking about this, my last Sunday with you as senior minister, and I guarantee a pandemic was not in my plan. But as I have said to you more than once over the years, there is an old saying, man plans, God laughs. At first, you can understand if I was seriously sad and angry. After all, when you make big plans, you get attached to them. And I had big plans. I started here in March of 2005. 15 years service struck me as a nice round number. And so when that landed on 2020, which is also the 40th year of my clergy life, I figured the planets were aligned. It was the perfect time to go. I chose Easter Sunday because, well, it's my favorite religious holiday, and I was saving two of my favorite pieces of music to share. One to express the joy of Easter, and the other to say farewell to this church. I planned. So yeah, I was seriously sad and angry to have my plans dashed. Then everything changed. Not that I felt better, but it was no longer just about me. The pandemic soon encompassed the nation and the world, and my losses were trivial. Trite as it sounds, and it is now a cliche, we are truly all in this together, in both needing one another and in suffering. This pandemic is bigger than both of us, bigger than all of us. And that's what reminds me of the Easter story. Because to those who were taking part in the story, it was unexpected and bigger than all of them. If you know me, you know I am spiritually multilingual. I engage, appreciate, savor many religious traditions for the beauty and wisdom and truth they all offer. On the one hand, I may be deeply agnostic about the claims themselves. I have no idea whether there is a God, but I am quite clear that we all ask that question. And I'm deeply interested in the way people have answered that question over the years, especially in that book we call the Bible, which is a profound, complicated, and rich record of spiritual life and longing. Even if none of the events in the Bible actually happened, the stories within it rank right up there with the great books that did not happen either, but still shape the way we think and how we feel. Thus, when I consider the Easter story, I'm not saying it happened in the historic sense, but that something happened that was so unexpected and so profound that people talked about it, shared it, wrote about it, and ultimately created a movement about it that became a world religion. That's a big deal. The story, as many of you know, appears in all four of the Gospels found in a Bible. Three of them are quite similar. In fact, Matthew and Luke likely used Mark as a basis for their material, but even John, who is very different in many ways, shares the outline from Thursday through Sunday. In other words, as different as they all are, they were all talking about the same story. Now, I love the differences, and I've studied them my whole life, but this year I noticed something I never appreciated before, and it's one of the reasons I'm telling you about it now. Common to every story is that the disciples are clueless. Having lived with him all these years, you'd think they might know more, but when you look at it, they are utterly dumbfounded about what's going on. Consider Palm Sunday. What's with the donkey, they seem to say. Why are we doing this? Then they then Jesus goes into the temple, and they're kind of mystified as to why he's doing that. And then they have to get together for a meal, and he speaks in these mysterious and poetic ways that they don't understand. And then he says someone's going to betray him, and they don't know what's going on. Come on, this is only 13 people. Someone had to know what was going on besides Jesus. But no, they didn't get it. Then, when he is arrested, the disciples, rather than rallying to his aid, scatter out of confusion and fear. Except Peter, who in all four accounts follows the soldiers at a distance as they take Jesus away, and while lurking outside the barracks, someone says, "Aren't you one of his disciples?" And he says no. And in fact says he never heard of him. And at that moment realizes that he too has betrayed him. This is not the story of heroes here. The disciples are clueless cowards. I like the disciples because of this, because they're more like regular people than all the other heroic figures in the Bible. Their reactions are actually very typical and even sensible in human terms. In a crisis, we all feel fear. We all feel confusion. We all feel uncertainty. Does that sound familiar right now? Because they scattered and hid on Sunday morning, they were not the ones to see the empty tomb. No, it was women who went back to the tomb to complete the burial process that had been interrupted by the Sabbath day. Isn't it always the women who show up when the tough gets going? Every account says that when the women got there, they were amazed, astonished, afraid, perplexed. And when they go and tell the disciples, who have been, remember, hiding since Thursday night, they have exactly the same reaction. Notice that none of these are happy terms. Not only did they not expect the news of the empty tomb, they were more afraid than happy, more perplexed than gratified. In other words, friends, in the story, there is no joy. Easter, the most joyful day in the Christian calendar, is anything but joyful to the people in the story. Now, when recent events in our life started to go south a few weeks ago, no one quite knew what to do. We were perplexed. When the danger became apparent, whole nations and communities scattered and hid, just like the disciples. Some denied it was even happening, sometimes more than once, until it was undeniable, very much like Peter. Maybe this is how all crises unfold. Movies tell us that we rise to the occasion, the music becomes intense, and we find our best selves. But in my experience, in a difficult time, we become more like ourselves, not different. And some will resist and fight, and some will cower and flee, and some will freeze in place, not knowing what to do, and that's human. But my point is that joy is never the response to the unexpected, especially big changes. Joy comes later. Now, there is no shortage of stuff on the internet these days, or for that matter on television, in telling us how to find joy in the little things during this difficult time. I've given into them myself, preaching on my little midday videos about how to find pleasure in nature and small things. And I understand it. I even approve, because we cannot live on the bread and water of mere survival for very long. But pleasure, momentary pleasure, is not joy in the deepest sense. Those who tell us to find joy now are confusing hope with joy. We want to feel good so that we don't give up and give in. I get it, and we need the hope. And I spoke about that 2 weeks ago. So now, where is the joy in COVID-19? Well, Let me back up a little bit. These last 4 weeks, I've returned to our Advent themes, which define us very deeply here: faith, hope, love, and joy. It was a shot in the dark when I decided to use them, and I did not know what I was going to say. I just knew that that seemed to be the right thing to do. After all, every plan I had made so far had fallen apart, so this plan was as tentative as I could make it. But that meant I struggled to find meaning in each one. And each one was more difficult than the last. But each one had an insight, and so does this one. As I tried to find the joy of this moment, I remembered the Christmas story itself from which we take it. Joy shows up twice in the Christmas story, and the one I want to lift up is the one that comes from Matthew, where the wise ones come from the east following a star. They came a long way, and as the Bible says, quote, "The star which they saw in the east went before them until it came and stood over the place where the child was. When they saw the star, they rejoiced with exceeding great joy." Just as I noticed that the disciples were clueless, I'm noticing only now that the wise ones only felt joy when they got to the end. This pandemic is far from over. We are still on the journey it requires us to take. Or to use the image from my Hope sermon, we are still in the storm and trying to find our way. In talking about hope, I said that when we are beset by stormy seas, when things are difficult, we need to fix our vision on a lighthouse on the shore. That's what the wise ones did. They fixed their eyes on a star on the far horizon, and they went toward the star. They followed it, not knowing exactly where it would go, but knowing that that was the direction they had to go. They had a goal. This is my last Sunday message to you as senior minister, and as I said, it's not the one I plan to give. My duty, though, tells me to put those hopes aside and to give you hope and courage right now. And that's what I'm trying to do. The joy we want is not yet here, but it is out there. Like the wise ones, we can go toward it for now. That's all we can do. Toward joy, toward the light, toward the star, toward the shore. There is a reason this church loves the choir anthem called "Choose Something Like a Star," because in it, the writer makes it clear we have to have a point of reference toward which we go, a goal. It may be far off. We may not even know exactly where it is going, but we need to go there if we are to remain true to ourselves, to overcome the struggle, to survive it. But I need to go one step further. What does that star portend for us in the future? And I want to tell you, I know what it is. The joy we are going toward is the joy of a new world. That is exactly the Easter story. When you think about it, the disciples and other followers, startled by what happened, came to believe that what was happening was the beginning of a new world, what they called the kingdom of God. Yes, their leader and teacher had died, and Rome was still in charge. Herod was still corrupt, but they began to believe that the world had changed because of Jesus' life and death. Everything was different, and they rejoiced in that. When this pandemic has receded, there will be, for a moment, a new landscape. Somewhat like when a hurricane or a tornado comes through. No, the houses won't be torn down, the trees won't have been blown over, but in a spiritual sense, in an emotional sense, in a social sense. Much that we are used to will have vanished. And in the midst of that apparent wreckage, in the sadness of all that loss, at that very moment, everything will be possible. Uncertainty will still be there, and yet there will be a hopeful uncertainty as well, not just a fearful one. At that moment, society will have a chance and a choice it has not had for generations. It is my hope that we humans pause long enough to ask ourselves, well, what if we decide to spend less time making and spending money and more time being neighbors and friends? What if we chose to keep taking an evening stroll every day and greeting our neighbors and not going right back to work after supper? What if we came to love the quieter streets and the cleaner air and decided that we wanted to keep them? There used to be a phrase people used, think globally, act locally. Well, isn't that what we are doing right now? What if we kept at it, even when we don't have to? And here at this church, we have the same choice, and it's even more exciting. Almost just over 100 years ago, in fact, this church burnt to the ground, and they paused long enough to think anew about what kind of church they wanted to be. And we have this building now, and we have this church, one that would not have existed if the church before had not burned to the ground. Well, I'm not proposing we burn the building to the ground, but not only will you get to enter the world in a new way, you'll be entering it with a new minister who will have new thoughts and new ideas. And maybe you will decide to continue this virtual worship even when you resume in-person worship, because it's reaching people we did not reach before, and that might be worth doing. Maybe you will continue to create the learning commons that Christopher has proposed and has tried to embody both here and beyond the church. Maybe you will care about that too. Maybe you will invest more in what we call our connections ministry, the small group spiritual life and learning that has been kind of small so far, but people are discovering in their homes that they value the connections as much as the sermons. I had lots of dreams for you when I arrived. Most of them didn't come true, but you have a chance to dream and make them happen. And your new minister can help you do that. There is thus reason to hope, because there will be a new world, and it won't be very long before it arrives. And in that hope is reason to rejoice, as the disciples did, as the wise ones did. So that's my message for you this Easter. Not the one I expected to give, but perhaps even more pertinent. It's okay to be like the disciples. Be afraid, be confused, be uncertain at this time, but be like them in their hope for joy, for the moment when the world is new, when, in the words of Denise Levertov, we remember that we have only begun to imagine the fullness of life. How could we tire of hope? So much is in bud. How can desire fail? We have only begun to imagine justice and mercy. We have only begun to envision how it might be. So much is in bud, she says. It is spring, after all. Lawns covered with autumn leaves are now full of bright blue snow glories. Robins and blackbirds raise a racket in the trees and make nests in the still bare branches. A herd of deer passed through town this week, dashing between houses as though it were a forest. The earth has rolled away the stone of winter and promises to bring spring back again. It is telling us to try again, to rejoice in the promise of a world made new. As the song says, how can we keep from singing? Truly, how can we not rejoice? May these words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be found true in thy sight, thou who art my rock and my Redeemer. I would now like to share through video one of the pieces of music I planned for this Sunday. It's from Bach's B minor Mass. It is the Laudaumus Te. It embodies for me in sound the joy I foresee us all feeling in the future, the joy I foresee for you when a new world arrives. One last thing. I remember having to wear fancy clothes at Easter when I was a boy, and I didn't like it then. They were scratchy and stiff, but I remember it. It is when we knew spring had come for sure. Right now, we don't feel much like spring, but I asked you to come to church today. I really did, by sending a photo of yourselves in your Sunday best so we can create a virtual Easter parade. And so here it comes with appropriate music and all. Finally, as we parade ourselves in our Easter best, thanks to all of you, whether I see your faces or not, for being part of Fountain Street Church during my service as senior minister. The farewell I planned will not be, but I do wish you to fare well. There is a new world coming, and I am glad to have been with you up until that very moment. It has been an honor and a privilege to serve you, but most importantly, a labor of love.
Never saw you look quite so pretty before. Never saw you dress quite so handsome, what's more. I could hardly wait to keep our date this lovely Easter morning. And my heart beat fast as I came through the door. For in your Easter bonnet, with all the frills upon it, you'll be the grandest fellow in the Easter parade. I'll be all in clover, and when they look us over, we'll be the proudest couple in the Easter parade. On the avenue, Fifth Avenue, the photographers will snap us, and you'll find that you're in the photogravure. Oh, I could write a sonnet about your Easter bonnet and of the guy I'm taking to the Easter